housing announcement and tent cities and blanket rezoning. So they are announcing yesterday. So they've had housing announcements, housing accelerator funds, unlocking housing. They've made all sorts of housing announcements. This is indicative of a government in panic, and they're trying to communicate, look, we're going to fix this housing problem. They created the housing problem, and the way they want to fix it is by increasing density, and it's not a serious solution. Not to mention the services. Like, say you've got a neighborhood of 200 homes, and then you want to change those into fourplexes. Imagine the needs on the water. Imagine the needs on electricity. Now add electric vehicles. This is not a serious plan, right? And people are pushing back on it. And so it's interesting that they're panicking and making all these announcements. And the more they panic and make these announcements, the more people laugh at them because the announcements are not achievable. Like, you're promising things you can't deliver because look at the mess you've made, you idiots. Basically, Iran is going to war with Israel. So everybody's talking about that. That's the big thing. I first saw it reported by CNN and I thought, uh-oh, here we go. And so there's a whole bunch of people talking about that overnight. CSIS director. So we're going to start with Senator Plett talking about Justin Trudeau and the Liberals. But we're quickly going to transition into the China thing. And yesterday, the director of CSIS testified that yes, indeed, he had been warning Justin Trudeau for years about this China problem. And so Justin Trudeau it didn't seem like there was any giving up on the part of CSIS. CSIS is saying, yeah, we were telling him. So there's lots to get to. Let's get to it. First, we've got to start with Senator Plett. Amazing Zoltan says, a Canadian senator just delivered a wild speech exposing Trudeau and his MPs for their history of corruption and incompetence, only covering 2015 to 2021. Oh, I thought it was all the way to 24. It is probably the most thorough and comprehensive list of receipts ever provided to the Trudeau government for their many embarrassments. So he talks about Marwan Tabara. He talks about Raj Grewal. He talks about the gambling. He talks about everything, man. And that's just in the first minute. Here we go.
The Liberal Hall of Shame for 2015 to 2021. Liberal MP William Amos was caught twice on House Zoom proceedings in indecent possessions. Liberal MP Yasmin Ratanzi was wrongfully employing her sister with taxpayers' dollars and deliberately hiding this information from Canadians. Liberal MP Ramesh Sangha was removed from the Liberal caucus in January of 2021 after he accused multiple other Liberal MPs of supporting the Khalistani movement. Liberal MP Darshan Singh Kang had to leave the Liberal caucus in 2015 over accusations of sexual harassment. Liberal MP Nicola Di Lorio didn't show up for work for a year after he announced his resignation in 2018. Then the public found out, oh, he actually didn't resign. He still collected his salary as an MP, even if he was working full-time in a law firm in Montreal. To this day, this situation has never been clearly explained by Trudeau and the Liberals. Liberal MP Raj Grewal admitted he racked up millions of dollars in debts playing casino blackjack and ended up resigning from the Liberal caucus in 2018 after the news came to light, following an RCMP investigation. But after suddenly announcing he had paid off his seven-figure debts, he stayed on as a member of Parliament for the rest of the parliamentary session. You may recall that Mr. Grewal was already under investigation by the Federal Ethics Commissioner at the time and was later found guilty of being in violation of conflict of interest.
That was with the bridge land deal, right? I think there was a whole land issue where he took control of land. There was a whole thing. I remember reporting, thinking this is wild. Pretty crazy. Senator Plett says it actually took me longer than 15 minutes. Here's the entire speech on YouTube. So yeah, check. Link is in the description if you're interested in that. Scandal after scandal after scandal, and Plett could go on and on, right, for at least 15 minutes. And then if we went from 21 to 23 or 24, I think he could go on even longer. Frank Capote who's an MP, says, I had to chuckle when an NDP member complained about Pierre Poilievre's spending in the House of Commons yesterday. Let's see how they spin this. So National Post is reporting Jagmeet Singh is Canada's most expensive MP. Pierre Poilievre is the cheapest. So it's one of those metrics that I think, again, seems like the press is having kid gloves for Mr. Poilievre. Tim is talking about CSIS and China. Let's shift into China. CSIS director pushes back on notion he did not fully brief Liberals on Chinese interference. Who to believe, Trudeau or anyone else? Yeah, anyone else. Anyone but Trudeau. Tracy Wilson says, don't let fake housing announcements distract you from what's really going on. Yeah, we're going to check out housing in a minute. But we have to talk about the CSIS stuff and China because, again, this really seems like there should be some kind of movement. Jagmeet Singh shouldn't just be walking away a little bit tentatively from the carbon tax. The government should fall before the end of this session. This government should fall with this China thing. It's crazy that it hasn't yet. This is a big enough deal, especially with all of the other scandals compounded on top of it. But Jagmeet Singh, if he does that, will he get reelected? Do you think Jagmeet Singh's seat is safe? I don't know, man. I don't know. The CSIS director testifies Trudeau government was repeatedly warned about Chinese interference. Here's the article. David Vineau says he's been warning Liberal government for years that Canada has been ill-equipped to combat foreign interference. CSIS director, okay. He also confirmed that he had not verbally discussed the contents of 3 important briefing documents directly with the Prime Minister and his senior staff, although he had shared similar information with them on previous occasions. Testifying for a second time to the public inquiry into foreign interference, Vineau also confirmed that the People's Republic of China, PRC, interfered clandestinely and deceptively in both 2019 and 21 federal elections, but said that it ultimately did not impact the election's outcome. Oh, isn't that convenient? How does he know? How does he know? Did he count those ballots? Does he understand exactly the impact of the $250,000 given to the 11 to 13 candidates just in Toronto? And does he understand how many other candidates there were? And how could that possibly be so that it didn't impact the election at all? Moving on, Vineau was recalled in an exponential move for the inquiry so he could explain what, if any, information he had specifically shared with the Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and the Prime Minister's senior staff from 3 top-secret briefing documents. The 3 CSIS briefings were only provided to parties to the inquiry this week, days after the spy agency's director had already testified to the commission. The documents, 2 dated October 26, 22 and 1 dated February 1st, 23, contain much of the same information and spell out CSIS's concerns in unusually direct ways about foreign interference by China and the Canadian government's failure to respond to the threat. Quote, Canada has been slower than our Five Eyes allies to respond to the foreign interference threat with legislation and other initiatives such as proactively publicizing successful disruption of foreign interference activities as a means of deterring future efforts, reads one note. Ultimately, state actors are able to conduct foreign interference successfully in Canada because there are no consequences, either legal or political. The use of this acronym, FI, for foreign interference, is lazy. It is absolutely lazy. Foreign interference is therefore a low risk and high reward endeavor. It continues. Yep. So this happened. Trudeau knew about it and did nothing about it. And we're supposed to say, oh man, they mean well. I don't think they mean well. I think they mean to help their handlers, and those handlers are Chinese. Wiretap Media says Karina Gould was the mastermind behind the collaborative foreign interference operation with the PRC that helped the Liberals win multiple elections, and news media failed to tell the truth again. This is interesting. It's 5 minutes. I've only watched 2.5 minutes of it. It's an interesting back and forth, and Wiretap Media does a good job at proving his point, but it takes the whole video. So I'll just leave the link in the description and you can check it out for yourself if you're interested. Maybe I'll play the first minute. I'll play the first minute. Here we go.
So Karina Gould has been testifying.
Oh, God. Sorry, too fast. Here we go.
This morning at the public inquiry into foreign interference in the 2019 and 2021 elections. As the former Minister of Democratic Institutions, Gould was tasked with curbing foreign meddling. All right, CTV's Mike LeCouture is at the interference inquiry for us this morning. He joins me now for a recap of what we have heard so far. And Mike, one of the phrases that she talked a lot about was the so-called Obama dilemma. Why was that crucial to her testimony today?
Yeah, it refers back to 2016 during the U.S. presidential campaign that then President Barack Obama was made aware of intelligence that Russia was trying to meddle in that election. And he was actually having that information but doing nothing about it. And part of the reason was that they were concerned that even the act of going public with that type of information would influence the election in one way or another.
Good morning, Minister Gould. My name is Tom Jarman. I'm counsel for Aaron O'Toole. So let's go back to the panel of 5 and the threshold, which I'm sure everybody will regret me getting into. You set and the panel of 5 has said it was a high threshold. They've said need reliable information. Your words this morning, they needed to be certain. Is that correct?
Correct.
So it's by design you've got that particularly. I would submit to you that, in fact, what you've done is you've institutionalized the Obama dilemma. Because on October 7th, 2016, the Obama administration actually told the American public that Russia was interfering in the election. And the subsequent criticism of him and his administration was that he took so long to do it while they were looking for certainty. Are you aware of that?
I've read all of the public information about it.
Okay, but you're aware that, in fact, the Obama administration did alert the U.S. citizenry about intervention in the 2016 election, prior to the election?
I don't recall exactly that moment.
Thank you.
But back to that point of
So the Obama dilemma is basically, should we go public with this shaky information, or should we keep it to ourselves and see what happens? And what's happened is our government has institutionalized that as the policy. We will keep it quiet until we know for sure. And will you know for sure? Well, not after you get a bunch of Chinese approved candidates in the government, because they'll bury that information desperately, right? Michael Cooper says, breaking, Justin Trudeau and his Liberals are not above the law. A top Liberal illegally leaked classified information. This is a serious criminal offense punishable by up to 14 years in prison. I've written to the RCMP to investigate. I await the commissioner's response. And my question is, what happens if the RCMP are as compromised as the Trudeau government is? What will the Conservatives do? What will Michael Cooper do? Is there a mechanism to hold the RCMP legally accountable or responsible? Is there a way to investigate the RCMP and be assured that they're investigating on behalf of the Canadian people? Or is there a way to make the RCMP investigate something on a short timeline rather than, something like the Nova Scotia timeline or any of the other things that the modern RCMP have taken on and just kind of shelved and ignored after they say there's an open investigation, right? Like, I am not convinced that having the RCMP investigate, could you get a private firm? Could we get Veronica Mars on it? Like, anybody, Andy Lee would be good. Veronica Mars is a fictional character. But she was a very good detective. I am concerned that the RCMP does not have Canadians' best interests at heart, and maybe the RCMP is owned by China and or influenced by the Chinese MPs who control our government. James Lindsay says, sharing on background for the obvious reasons, and what's going on is China is sending a police force to Hungary in order to strengthen something or other, and the EU is really mad about it. Basically, this is reported by the telegraph.co.uk. And I read the article, and after reading the article, I still didn't really understand why, like the rationale behind Hungary bringing in the China. Like they were saying, shared mutual responsibility for these blah, blah things, counterterrorism, that kind of stuff, right? But it seems strange to welcome Chinese counterterrorism with open arms, and the EU's upset about it. So this is Hungary, right? You'd not think Hungary, like Orban, was on board with Chinese police force operating in Hungary. So that's weird, right? So the whole thing seems hinky and weird, and the EU's upset about it. But China's not just working in Canada. They're working all across the West in the EU. They're working in Africa, right? They're working in Australia. Holy smokeronies, they're everywhere, right? So it is very interesting that we in Canada are downplaying foreign interference, especially Chinese foreign interference. And it's been more than a year since this bombshell broke, right? Holy smoke. Alan is responding to Justin Trudeau. Justin Trudeau is talking about carbon taxes, and he's First, he's talking about how he's going to solve this problem. And second, he's wondering why Jagmeet Singh is no longer supporting the carbon tax. And so, interesting. Trudeau warning. Here we go.
Carbon pricing, it's not just politicians, it's people as well. A new poll by Liaison Strategies found a majority of Ontario residents rank the cost of living higher than environmental protections, and a plurality are in favor of abolishing the price on carbon, even if it means eliminating their personal carbon price rebate. So can you tell Ontarians why your government's price on carbon is more important than their ability to make ends meet?
But the way we price carbon actually puts more money in the pockets of 8 out of 10 families, like families in Ontario, where the cost of living is high and where the need to fight climate change is clear with every wildfire, with every flood, with every drought.
So the question was, why do you think people should put climate change above their inability to make ends meet, pay for everything? And Trudeau pivots to, it gives people more money back than they get. But the question was explicitly talking about people not being able to afford anything because of this carbon tax. So he's not even going to entertain that the people who can't make ends meet are telling the truth, are actually experiencing that. He's making the argument
a majority of Ontario
that this is easy compared to the damage that climate change will cause, but it's fictional. It's fictional. What he's talking about is fictional. They may try and make it reality with their economic policies and wildfire policies and all the rest and the spraying in the skies. But I do not believe these people are telling the truth, period. Period. Shazzy is responding to the same clip. Reporter to Trudeau, can you tell Ontarians why your government's price on carbon is more important than their ability to make ends meet? And Trudeau says, but we're giving them more money back than they spend on the carbon tax. But that's not true, right? Trudeau is asked about moving forward with carbon taxes despite dwindling support from provinces and even Jagmeet Singh's waning support. Here we go.
The NDP is expressing reservations about the carbon tax. What does it signal that you have lost many premiers and now you may be losing the NDP's support for your plan as well?
I feel for the NDP and for Jagmeet. This is a hard moment. There are political headwinds. There's a lot of political pressure. I'm certainly feeling it. Everyone should be feeling it. By folks out there who are worried about affordability, who are worried about climate change. And I don't know, my perspective is this is a time to actually do more to fight climate change, not less. To do more to put money in people's pockets. And it's not a handful of conservative politicians and premiers that are going to turn me away from continuing the fight against climate change, the fight for a better future, and the fight to put more money in people's pockets.
Totally reimagining everything that's happening because he's not actually fighting climate change and he's not putting more money in people's pockets and he's making inflation worse and he's making affordability worse and he's making ability to get an apartment or house or anything to that effect worse, more difficult. And instead, he's claiming that, oh yeah, I'm fighting for Canadians in the middle class. Twitchy McTwitch-a-lot is twitching a lot. So it's just interesting if you focus in on Chrystia Freeland. This is her during the same speech.
Building homes and great buildings and apartments to rent. It's about making sure that nurses, construction workers, teachers who work in a given city can also live in that given city. And that's something we're all gathered here today.
It's just strange. She's just a strange person. CTV News says, Trudeau says he doesn't understand why NDP is pulling back from the carbon tax support. Oh, he does say that. He says that in this speech here. Hold on, we didn't get there. I'll continue because he says, I don't understand why they're pulling back. Here we go.
So I don't entirely understand the position of the NDP in pulling back both from affordability measures and from the fight against climate change. But I can assure everyone that this government, my government, will continue to step up on the fight against climate change. We'll continue to put more money in families' pockets.
It's probably because the NDP can read the polls and listens to their voicemail. I'm not sure. People, the public, don't like the idea of the carbon tax. They're done with it. I was going to read you what Trudeau said, but we just listened to what Trudeau said, so I don't need to read it again. He's confused about why the NDP is not supporting him. And the NDP aren't supporting him because the constituents don't support the NDP. And they keep telling the NDP, if you support this crap, we're not going to vote for you. So that's why the leader of the NDP publicly distanced himself from the carbon tax 2 days ago, right? That's why. There's no other reason, right? Jagmeet Singh isn't just having fun and thinking, I can make this play for prime minister right now. Nope. He's responding. And I'm sure that his MPs, a couple of whom have left, have told him in no uncertain terms, stop this nonsense or we're gone too. And if Jagmeet loses his whole party, well, that's hard to prop up the Liberals with no party, right? So it's very interesting. And eventually this government is going to collapse, eventually, right? And so hope it's happened sooner than later. The Post-Millennial is reporting Kevin Vung on the carbon tax. We should not be hurting Canadians and forcing them to pay for something that is, in essence, subsidizing China and other polluters around the world. Yeah, we shouldn't be taxing Canadians on energy. We shouldn't be taxing Canadians on food. We shouldn't be allowing invasion immigration to overwhelm our services in the provinces and overwhelm our ability to house the people who are living here now. We shouldn't do that. We shouldn't do that, and we should not tax on other things. And any government that's not like this, the solution to these problems, I think, is simple. And then people will say, what about all the taxpayer-funded entitlements that you get, like education and healthcare and all these other things? And we're going to talk about healthcare in a minute, but healthcare is a path to medical-assisted death at this point in time. And it's not worth the money we pay for it because of administrative bloat, it seems, and just bloat all around in the program. Education's another example of that. The passport office is another example of that. Everything the government touches turns to poop. There's no reason to think that they can deliver these services better than we can get them done privately. And privately, you'd have more control. And so I understand that Canadians really like the system that they had in the 1990s and the 1980s and the 1970s. And there were no issues and everything was perfect. But those situations don't exist anymore because those institutions have become taken over by communists and bloated beyond recognition. Like it's not even a shadow of its former self, right? Unfortunately. And so I think there are great teachers. I think there can be great teachers within a system that is rotten to the core, right? There are good people trying to fight the good fight, right? And a lot of people get into education to help kids, right? I'm not saying that the teachers are bad necessarily. Some of them are. But same with the nurses, right? But the system itself is set up for a collapse. And so if we collapse it and fix it so that you don't have to pay a bullshit tax for a product that you don't get, that makes more sense to me, right? Like, sure, we're losing a bit of our culture, I think, like in the culture that I grew up in was, Canada will take care of you and blah, 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 blah. But that's not true anymore. It's not true. They'll throw you in prison and ignore you, Coots 4, right? So it's Tamara Lich, right? While sex assault cases fall apart because there's not enough judges, right? So like the paradigm that we were trying to make decisions around, right? The decision matrix, has changed drastically from the 1990s, and people have not updated their map of reality, in my opinion. Rebel News is reporting Alberta Premier Danielle Smith says she tried to work in good faith with Environment Minister Stephen Guilbeault. He has no interest in working with the provinces, she says, calling Guilbeault an ideologue. Yeah, she does. It's good. Here we go. Just a minute. Here we go.
Do you ever believe that Stephen Guilbeault will work in partnership with you? No. Or do you think he should resign?
I think he should. I've been asking for some time. I tried. I tried in good faith to work with Stephen Guilbeault, but he's an ideologue and he is not changing direction. He doesn't take, what he does is he talks to the provinces as a box checking exercise to say he consulted, and he has no interest in working in the spirit of collaborative federalism, despite losing twice with the Impact Assessment Act, which admonished the federal government to stay in their own lane, and with the federal plastics being declared toxic, which they said was not only an overreach, but also a violation of the Constitution. So he keeps losing in court. He is not a good faith partner at the cabinet table. When he goes to international conferences, he gives surprise announcements that he doesn't talk to us about that impacts our area of jurisdiction. So I've said if the Prime Minister wants to restart his relationship with the premiers and with us in particular, we need a new partner. We need a new Environment Minister.
So there you go. We're not going to be able to deal with this guy. He's never dealing in good faith. Never, right? And I believe her to be accurate on that. CBC watchers sharing this one. Edmonton Journal's reporting mega intellectual PR machine. Professor blasts gigantic funding of Trudeau Liberal climate narrative. So this is the food professor, and it's a whole article talking about how climate change narrative is basically false, and it's a big PR machine, and it doesn't have any basis in reality. Here's a quote from the article. Charlebois said a major plank of the strategy by the Trudeau Liberals to convince the public of the rightness of the federal carbon tax is to fund academics and environmental groups, then count on them to spread the government narrative. That's part of it. Yeah. Yep. And the whole article is interesting. It's a little beyond the scope of today's podcast. I was reading it. It's interesting, but maybe I'll pull out a couple of interesting quotes. He highlights the open letter by the economists talking about the climate change initiative and how that was just part of the PR machine. It was widely quoted in the media after its release. Reagan is on the board of the Canadian Climate Institute. In April 23, the Institute got a $30 million grant from the federal government for its work on clean growth and climate change. In an interview, Charlebois told me he does not doubt the honesty of fellow researchers, and he says that they do some good work, but nonetheless, he has concerns. It appears that the government has equipped itself with a mega intellectual PR machine that supports a specific narrative, Charlebois says. You do wonder why there's so much money poured into these institutions. What are we getting out of that? And are we getting a debate? Are we getting information? Are we getting good science? Or are we just getting research to support our current government's environmental policy path? That seems to be the case. It's all one-sided. Science is about debate. It's about looking at policy from different angles. I don't see different angles here. I just see advocacy. So yeah, that's it. They're stacking the deck to make it look like this is the truth when it may not be. And I strongly believe that they're trying to mislead, and they know that what they're saying is false, right? They know they're saying false things, and they don't care because the narrative, their ideology is driving them in that direction. They believe it to be the right thing, regardless of the evidence one way or the other. So scary stuff. Let's talk about housing. Housing is a big deal. Here's another Trudeau warning. Ryan Garrettson highlights the Trudeau government couldn't even build an app without screwing it up. Okay, an app that should have cost less than $1 million cost $60 million, and they want to build houses by 2031, which is not going to happen. Here we go.
We are releasing the most comprehensive and ambitious housing plan ever seen in Canada. It builds on the sizable investments we've made over the years, and it goes a lot further. It's a plan to build housing, including for renters, on a scale not seen in generations. We're talking about almost 3.9 million homes by 2031. It's a plan
not achievable
that at its heart is a commitment to affordability. Our goal is that no Canadian pays more than 30% of their income towards their home. It's also a plan to make sure that we don't leave the most vulnerable behind, that we keep building housing for people with low incomes, and that we take action to address homelessness so people never have to resort to living in a tent. And it's a Team Canada approach that provides incentives for provinces, territories, builders, and nonprofits to come on board. The math is simple. If we can increase housing supply, we can bring down prices.
If we reduce demand, we can bring down prices. Holy smoke. And he's the only one who can do that. He's the only one who can reduce demand. He broke it with with throwing the supply and demand out of balance by increasing immigration to a point that resulted in tent cities. And he's saying, I can fix this by building homes and reducing the reducing or increasing the supply. No, that's not how you solve this problem. Doug says Trudeau's tried to snow Canadians again today. 3.9 million houses by 2031. That's 557,142 a year, assuming a 5-day work week. That's 260 days a year. 2,142 houses have to be built in a day. Please explain how that is possible. So every day, 2,142 houses need to be built in order to achieve this goal of 3.9 million houses. Now, in Ontario, I'll tell you, they're redefining what is a house. A dorm room, yep, that's a house. So if I'm in a dorm room and sharing with another person, I went to college, so I had my own physical room, and we had like a kitchenette and a bathroom in there, which was okay. But that's 2 houses because 2 beds, 1, 2, right? And if you're in a semi-private retirement home, they want your bed to count as your house. So if you're in a semi-private, right? So you've got 6 semi-private rooms in a retirement home, and that's 12 houses. How are they going to build 3.9 million homes? They're going to redefine what a home is, right? That's what they're going to do. Hello, everyone. Thanks very much for watching. This is just a short version of a longer show. If you'd like to get the whole show, you can go over to CanadaPoly.com and sign up for a subscription. Just look in the drop-down tab for Shop and Donate and look for subscriptions, and you'll get immediate access to the full show. Love to see you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful